Thebes, year 23 of the reign of Pharaoh Akhemrah. The desert winds howled against the golden walls of Thebes as high priests gathered under moonlight. Torches flickered in long shadows, and the scent of myrrh and lotus filled the air. At the center of the temple of Amun-Ra, Pharaoh Akhemrah stood draped in shimmering linen, face stoic, eyes distant. Before him knelt his daughter, Princess Maritamen, barely 16, cloaked in white, with skin like alabaster and hair braided in threads of gold. Her eyes, the color of Nile water at dusk, stared down, trained not to question. But inside, she trembled. Tonight she would be crowned queen and wife of her father, the prophecy that changed everything. It began with a dream. 3 months earlier, High Priest Ankh of Claim Amun-Ra himself had spoken during the festival of Opet. The message was divine, delivered in signs. The throne must not pass to foreign blood. The sun god's seed must return to itself. The pharaoh, chosen by the gods, must bind his own bloodline. Akhemrah, a man once known for quiet pragmatism, accepted it without pause. Perhaps it was ambition, perhaps madness, or perhaps truly he believed he was Ra incarnate and, like Ra, deserved no mortal wife. So he turned to his daughter, Maritamen. The living vessel, Maritamen was raised not as a child, but as an offering. Her education was steeped in priestly rituals, sacred geometry, the language of birds and stars. She knew she would serve the gods, but never imagined she would serve as consort to the man who fathered her. No one dared object, the court whispered, but in silence. The viziers smiled too tightly. The queen mother wept behind a curtain, unseen. On the night of the wedding, Maritamen was bathed in Nile water, painted in oils of frankincense, and wrapped in sheer linen robes reserved for priestesses of Hathor. She was no longer simply a princess. She was the great wife. The wedding of incense and fire, the royal wedding unfolded with pomp and mystery. Gold trumpets blared as priests circled the bear with lotus wreaths. The pharaoh placed a golden necklace around Maritamen's neck, a symbol of life, though hers was slowly being signed away. The crowd cheered as they walked the ceremonial path to the inner sanctum of the temple, where only gods and their avatars may lie together. Behind closed doors, Maritamen lay still as marble. The pharaoh touched her not with lust, but with ritualistic devotion. "This is the will of the gods," he whispered. She nodded, but a tear slipped into her hair, unseen. Whispers of the curse. By morning, the city awoke to proclamations of divine marriage. Poets wrote odes, statues were carved. A new queen now sat beside the sun, but among the priestesses of Hathor and the healers of Heliopolis, whispers grew. Ancient texts warned of the mirror of Ra, a child born from God upon God, whose body could not hold the burden of purity twice folded. One tablet spoke clearly, when the fire feeds itself, the flame turns inward, and from it is born the child of silence, cursed to walk between this world and the next. Some called it legend, others called it prophecy. But in the inner chambers of the palace, Maritamen felt something stir inside her, an ache not of the flesh, but of the spirit, the growing fear. Weeks passed. The Nile began to rise too early. Crops withered under sudden heat. Locusts appeared in the west. The people blamed demons. The priests blamed ritual impurities. But some pointed to the palace, to the union that defied not just man, but At the balance of all things, inside the royal court, Maritamen began to wither. Her appetite waned, her sleep became fractured. She heard whispers and her dreams whispers and voices she didn't recognize, calling her by names she'd never heard. And then, one morning, her handmaidens discovered blood on her sheets. The princess-turned queen was with child. The Pharaoh's delirium, Akhemra rejoiced. It will be the divine heir, a king like no other. He called forth goldsmiths, scribes, and astrologers to prepare the child's destiny. But the high priests grew uneasy. In their secret scrolls were stories of Thutmose's failed heir, of princes born blind, twisted, voiceless, of sons that roared like lions in the womb, but never breathed air. The god within may not tolerate repetition, but Akhemra ignored them. He saw visions of gods in flames, statues that smiled, and birds that circled over his palace at night. And in Maritamen's chamber, as her belly grew, the whispers turned to screams. The pregnancy of dread, Maritamen's chambers, once filled with lotus scent and temple chants, now reeked of damp cloth, sour sweat, and candle smoke. The queen no longer sat on polished thrones or walked marble halls. She lay curled like a dying cat, barely able to lift her head. Midwives came and went in silence, eyes lowered. No one dared speak what they saw, a pregnancy that moved to fast, a belly too large for how little time had passed, and the whispers had not stopped. At night the unborn child kicked not with rhythm but with violence at times. Maritamen screamed in her sleep not from pain but from visions. She claimed to see her mother, long dead, weeping in the Nile. She spoke in languages the priests had long buried in sand. The child was growing, but not like any child they'd seen before, the midwives' warning. 3 midwives fled the palace after the 7th moon. One went mad. Another drowned herself in a sacred pool. The third, caught on the outskirts of Thebes, screamed until her throat bled. It is not a child, it is the echo of a god's mistake. She was executed before dawn, but not before the people heard. Signs from the sky on the night of the 8th moon. A black ibis flew into the royal temple and shattered an oil lamp on the altar of Mat. That same night the stars disappeared behind red dust. A choking heat settled over the city, and children were born dead in the slums. The court astrologers offered no explanation, but the scribes recorded an ancient omen, one buried in the 3rd tomb of Neferfer. When gods marry gods, the gate of Duat opens to why the child shall pass through both life and afterlife, and death will kneel beside his cradle. The child is born at the 9th moon. Maritamen screamed through the night. The royal birth chamber was surrounded by guards, no priestesses allowed. Only the high priest of one physician and to loyal attendants of the Pharaoh. It lasted 3 days. On the 3rd, the screaming stopped. For a moment, silence reigned across the palace. Then a cry, but it was not the wail of a newborn. It was deep, wet, wrong. The physician staggered from the chamber, his eyes hollow, his hands covered in blood. He said only one word, "He lives." Then he collapsed. The emperor's delight, Pharaoh Akhemra, entered the chamber alone. No one else saw the child but him. When he emerged, his voice was calm, serene, exultant. The heir of gods has been born. His name shall be Jezer-Khepera, the sacred one of many forms. He ordered statues, shrines, gold amulets forged in triple blessings. But no one saw the child again, not even the queen. Maritamen had fainted after birth. When she woke, her arms were empty, her memory fragmented. They told her the child was well, divine, protected. She didn't believe them, and at night she heard the cry again, not from outside, but inside her skull, the hidden prince. In a remote chamber beneath the palace, once a crypt, now sealed with gold, Geezer Pharaoh was kept. The child did not grow like others. His eyes opened on the first day. His teeth arrived on the third week. He never suckled, he never cried again. But he spoke, not words, not human ones. Priests brought him scrolls, hoping to teach him the hymns of Ra. Instead, he began to draw on the walls with his fingers symbols from lost dynasties, signs never recorded, and on the 40th day, the priest Ankh vanished. All that remained in the chamber was the child sitting calmly, a lotus flower placed before him, still and untouched. Maritamen's collapse. The queen no longer asked for her son. She no longer spoke. Her hair whitened before her 18th year. She spent her days staring at the horizon, and her nights rocking an invisible infant in her arms. One evening, she whispered to her servant, "He was not born from me. He was poured into me, and now I am empty." The first death, 2 guards assigned to watch the prince, died within a month. Their flesh rotted, though no wounds appeared. Their tongues turned black. The healer who touched their bodies lost the use of her hands. Word spread the curse was no longer rumor. It was reality. The Pharaoh's refusal. Advisors begged the Pharaoh to take action, to separate the bow from the court, to consult the oracles in Nubia or the necromancers in Memphis. But Akhimra refused. "He is the future," he said. "He is Rari born." When one brave advisor insisted the child be sent to the desert for cleansing, Akhimra had him strangled with a priest's sash. Fear ruled the palace now. Even the gods had gone quiet. The dream of blood on the night of the red moon. Every priest in Thebes dreamed the same dream. A serpent of gold coiled around the palace. Inside, the child stood in fire. He opened his mouth, and from it came not sound but sand, endless and swallowing. When they awoke, every holy pool in the city had turned to mud. The boy behind the door. 3 years passed. The boy Geezer Pharaoh remained unseen. He was never carried through the gardens, never held by the queen, never blessed before the altars. The people had only his statues, a child with perfect features, a serpent crown, and gold inlaid eyes, but the real child had changed. His skin was pale, nearly translucent. His pupils were no longer round, and he no longer walked. He drifted, silently, like a shadow cast before the sun. The palace servants had a rule: never speak his name aloud, never look directly at him. One did not obey. By morning his mouth was gone, not sewn shut, gone flat flesh where lips had been. He never spoke again. The madness of Maritamen. Maritamen, once the great wife, was now the whispering one. She spoke only to shadows, refused to eat except from gold bowls she had once used to feed birds. She claimed the walls bled when her son passed by. The Pharaoh banned anyone from speaking of her illness, but she was no longer ill. She was unraveling. One night she carved symbols into her arms, old warnings etched in Coptic script. When asked why, she replied, "He speaks in my dreams. He shows me cities burning. He wants more than a crown. The curse spreads. The priests who attended the child began to die one by one. Not violently, they simply forgot who they were. First names, then prayers, then language itself. They became husk silent men walking in circles, eyes empty, hands twitching in rhythm with nothing. The high priest of Ra, terrified, declared the boa must be purified in the Nile. Pharaoh Akemra refused. He is already pure, the Pharaoh said. It is we who are corrupted, the first wonder. On the eve of Djeser Kheperu's 4th birthday, a royal scribe noticed something strange. A scroll written in the boy's chamber was in no known language. When translated phonetically, it spoke of a city that did not yet exist, but would one of towers made of glass, where metal birds flew and no god ruled. Madness, said the scribe. He burned the scroll. By nightfall, the entire east wing of the palace where the scroll had been stored collapsed without warning. No quake, no fire, just silence, then ruin. The disappearance of the queen. Meritamen vanished, no trace, no blood, no torn fabric or fleeing witnesses. She had been seen sitting by a window, whispering to a shadow. The next morning, the chair was empty, and her room. A single phrase was scratched into the wall in dried wine. He has opened the gate. Only Pharaoh Akemra read it. He ordered the wall destroyed, but the next day the words reappeared, this time carved into the floor of the main temple. No tool matched the cuts, the Pharaoh's defiance. Finally, even the Pharaoh wavered. He entered the boy's chamber alone. Guards say he wore no gold, no crown, only a white robe. He emerged hours later, weeping. I saw forever, he whispered. I saw myself and made. He ordered every scholar in Egypt summoned. He demanded they translate every forbidden scroll, every fragment of the Book of the Dead. He would understand his son, or he would destroy himself trying. The prophecy reborn. One scribe blind and one eye brought an old tablet from an abandoned temple in Dendera. Its inscription was cracked and faded, but the symbols were unmistakable. A child born of same blood, flesh of God and daughter. He will know past and future, and in his 5th year he shall speak the true name of death. The Pharaoh collapsed. The 5th year the day came quietly, no festival, no gifts, no drums, only a stillness across Thebes, like the air had stopped moving. At dawn the boy emerged. He walked barefoot, alone, to the great courtyard. Every servant bowed, though no order had been given. At the center of the courtyard, he looked to the sky and raised a single hand. He spoke a word no one understood, and the sun dimmed. The Nile runs black. That night the Nile turned dark, not muddy, not red, black. Fish floated belly up. Farmers refused to enter the water. Animals would not drink. A traveling priest from Nubia saw the water and fell to his knees, whispering, "This is not death, this is something worse." The Pharaoh's choice, Akemra, had grown thinner, older, haunted. He stood on the temple steps with a sword in hand. "I must end this," he told his guards. Before he ends us, he entered the child's chamber. What he saw has never been written, only that he screamed, and when guards broke in, the Pharaoh was gone. The boy sat calmly on the floor. A gold ankh, broken, lay beside him. The throne is empty. For the first time in 24 years, the golden throne of Akemra stood without a ruler. No body was found, no mourning procession held. Only a silence, thick as linen, stretched across the palace. The viziers announced he had ascended into his embrace. But everyone knew the Pharaoh was gone. Some said the boy devoured his soul. Others believed he had simply stepped beyond time. Whatever the truth, the throne remained cold, and Pharaoh, not yet 6 years old, was declared co-regent. His coronation was brief. No crown touched his head. He wore only a simple white robe and looked directly at the priests. They could not hold his gaze, a city on edge. Thebes became a city of omens. Crops grew overnight, but rotted before harvest. Birds flew in reverse formations across the sky. A temple bell rang by itself for 3 days. Merchants refused to enter the city. Pilgrims turned away at the gates, and still the boy remained in the palace, silent, always watching. No one rule, because he didn't need to. The queen's return, Maritamen returned in the 7th month after the pharaoh's disappearance. She walked barefoot through the palace gates in a torn robe, skin sun-browned, hair matted with sand. She spoke no words, but the moment she entered, the boy emerged from his chamber smiling for the first time. He reached for her hand, and she took it. The court fell to their knees, for though she had once been queen, and once a vessel, now they saw what she had become, the mother of something not entirely human. The new rituals, under the boy's silent command, new rituals began each night. Fires were lit in the palace courtyard in the shape of spirals, ancient signs not found in any scroll. Priests were ordered to chant not from the Book of Ra, but from a new text dictated by the boy himself. He spoke only in images drawn on papyrus. They showed visions of stars falling, of men with animal heads kneeling, of cities made of light and glass and flame. The scribes called it the Book of the End, the dying moon. On the night of the waning moon, the river Nile reversed course. Old women howled in the streets. Midwives delivered infants with eyes already open, teeth already formed. One man, upon seeing the child's shadow on the temple wall, tore out his own eyes and shouted, "He has no end, only beginnings." No one stopped him. The priests' revolt. A faction of priests, led by the last Aesir of Anubis, conspired to end the child. They entered the palace at midnight with daggers soaked in cobra venom and spales carved into bone. They found him asleep, or so they thought. When they lunged, the candles around the chamber extinguished, and the air turned thick with something ancient. The guards who entered after found only ashes, and in the center of the room the child sat and touched, humming a song no one could understand. The collapse of the great library. A fire consumed the royal library of Thebes. It began without flame. Scrolls simply unraveled. Ink vanished from the parchment. Stone tablets cracked, then melted like wax. By dawn, 3,000 years of knowledge had disappeared. The high scribes wept, but the boy simply watched from a balcony, whispering to himself, old truths must fall for the new sun to rise. The visions of foreign kings, news of the cursed child, traveled beyond Egypt. In Babylon, a king tore down his tower in fear. In Hattusa, the queen sealed her palace gates and threw the keys into the sea. In Cush, a prince drowned himself rather than dream of the boy again. Across the world, seers warned of a name that could not be spoken. They drew his image, a child with golden eyes, a serpent's tongue, and feet that cast no shadow. Maritamen's final act. Maritamen, now fully returned to the palace, became her son's high priestess. She no longer slept. She no longer spoke to others. she wrote. Hundreds of scrolls, buried deep within the crypts, wrapped in black silk and sealed with her blood. Each scroll bore the same mark, a single closed eye drawn with shaking hand, and one sentence: he will forget, but the world will remember. Then one morning she vanished again. This time no one looked for her the decision. The boy, now nearly 7, stood before the throne one final time. He looked around the great court. No one dared speak. Then he said, "The sun will set, the stars will burn out, and when all is dust, I will be born again." He stepped down from the dais and walked into the inner sanctum. The doors closed. They were never opened again. The doors that never opened again. After the boy stepped into the inner sanctum, the doors, solid granite slabs carved with divine seals, shut with a thunderous echo. No guard closed them, no lock was turned. They sealed themselves. The priests prayed, the generals waited, but no sound ever came from within, and so the throne of Egypt stood empty once more. Thebes entered mourning, but no body lay in state. No procession carried a coffin. No name was spoken. Only silence and the shape of a child behind a door. The empire without a sun. Years passed. The sun no longer shone as brightly over Thebes. The Nile receded earlier each season. Crops failed. Livestock refused to birth. A dry stillness fell over the land like gauze over a corpse. Pharaoh Akhemra was remembered not as a builder or warrior, but as the man who married his daughter and brought forth the end of balance. Maritamen became myth. Some said she became a goddess of silence. Others claimed she was devoured by the child she bore. No one dared enter the sanctum, and soon no one dared speak of it at all. The temple falls in the 13th year after the sealing. An earthquake struck Thebes. Only one structure fell, the temple of the inner sanctum, crack straight down the center, as if struck by a sword of sky. When the priests cleared the rubble, they found only dust. No bones, no gold, no bow, only a single black lotus resting in the exact center of the stone floor, and a whisper heard by all who entered, though no lips moved. "I am not gone. I am remembering the scrolls of Maritamen." Centuries later, a tomb was uncovered far south of Thebes. Inside were scrolls sealed in oil-soaked linen, undisturbed, untouched by time. The handwriting was delicate, feminine, and fragmented. It told the story of a girl promised to the gods, a child poured into her by decree, not love, and a birth that cracked the gates of do-it-itself. Each scroll ended the same way. The child is not evil, the child is the debt. We are the ones who borrowed from the gods, and now he is the collector. The plague of eyes. In 315 BC, a scholar in Alexandria reported a strange illness. Children were being born with full memories of past lives. Some spoke in tongues from dead dynasties. Others drew symbols matching Maritamen's scrolls, though no one had shown them. They all spoke of a name they could not say, a figure in white robes with golden eyes and no shadow. The scholar called it the curse of the second birth. The records were burned. The scholar was executed, but some say one of the children disappeared. The Roman encounter. In 12 BC, a Roman expedition uncovered ruins near Thebes. Among them, a sealed chamber, undisturbed, wrapped in gold wire inscriptions. They broke it open. Inside, on the far wall, burned in black glass, were the words, "The boy remembered That night half the expedition vanished. The survivors returned to Rome, raving of voices, stars bleeding, and doors that breathed. They were never believed, but one of them, a scribe named Lucius, became obsessed. His last entry in his journal read, "He is not gone. He waits for our memory to return. The legend endures." In the 11th century, Arab scholars warned of a Pharaoh's son who walked among ruins. He never aged, he never spoke, but where he stood, mirrors cracked, and people dreamed of things that had not yet happened. In the 19th century, Napoleon's men whispered of a child figure following their caravan by moonlight, never walking, never blinking. In 1923, when Howard Carter entered Tutankhamun's tomb, a local guide fainted before crossing the threshold. He had seen, in the dark, the outline of a bow with gold eyes. And in modern times, tourists in Thebes still report a strange phenomenon: children suddenly crying near temple ruins, dogs howling at empty courtyards. And in one viral video since deleted, a child was caught on camera tracing a symbol into the sand, the Eye of Ra. Closed the final scroll, one last scroll, translated in 2023 from a hidden tomb, reads, "You look for kings and crowns, you forget the child. He does not rule with armies or chariots. He waits in memory, in bloodlines, and you, the gods made him, we fed him. Now we carry him, his throne is behind your eyes." And so the Pharaoh is dust. The temple has fallen, the names are lost, but one truth remains: the curse was never about the past. It was a warning, and you have just remembered it.